Hey, welcome back to the Racking Focus podcast. I'm Josiah Blizzard.
And I'm John Doyle, and we're again here at the United Artists Regal Theater in King of Prussia.
We're here to see Dark Phoenix, and it's going to be an interesting film as they pretty much rewrite the ending of the previous trilogy to X-Men. So, I don't know if you're excited about it, but...
I'm super excited about the film.
Yeah.
I have a long history with these stories,
Yeah.
but I have no idea what to expect with the amount of retconning we can
Yeah,
experience
as long as
tonight.
it's better than X3, then I'll be happy.
Big win.
Yep. All right, ready to go?
Yeah, let's go.
You're listening to the Racking Focus podcast.
All right, you can start this time. I feel like I started every time. You're going to start it up.
All right, so we're back after seeing Dark Phoenix at the United Artists in King of Prussia, and I have to say that I was happy about a lot of things. There was some stuff that I struggled with, but as a movie, we have a bug. Oh, we have a bug. That's exciting. It's our first.
That was our first bug.
Our first bug in the car while we're reviewing, I guess. There was some stuff I liked a lot. It was interesting. It followed a very traditional plot of...
Let me ask, do you only like those
X-Men?
things because you've read the comics?
Oh, so I'm going to say I think there are some things that I like because of the comics.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say this is not at all accurate to the story of the comics.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So there you go.
Is the previous trilogy more accurate to the comics than this?
No. No, there's there's some character things that may be closer along the way,
Right.
especially because they're all more mature in the comics.
Yeah, we're older, right?
Yeah, but no, I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah.
So what'd you think?
I sat there. I had my eyes closed a few times. I don't know if you could feel the energy coming from my seat.
I certainly felt the breathing.
Yeah, there was a lot of sighing. This felt like a fan film that was strewn together by a writer who likes to tell, not show, and likes to give a lot of info dumps because they don't know how to write. And there was no structure, it felt like to me. Like, I know you're saying it was very like normal, but the whole time I'm like, this doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like a whole bunch of separate scenes that have just been kind of compiled together to create a story that might have been there at one point. And I felt so bad for the actors because it was just a disservice to the incredible actors that are in this.
I think the actors
show.
are better than the movie for sure,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And in particular, our Dark Phoenix, our Jean Grey,
Yeah.
really is working out there, right? Like she's doing some very serious work out there.
There's, I felt like, after watching her as Sansa Stark, I felt like there was a lot of writing that was holding her back because you have such a strong character in Game of Thrones that she can actually play with the character and she can make creative decisions and she can, show off her chops or acting. But like in here, it felt like she was very limited to the box that they put her in. She can't do anything outside of like what the director's telling her to do. Like,
Let's loop back around to story in a second.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about a couple film things.
Okay.
One thing I want to say about the filmmaking of this is it felt very much like a television filmmaking style.
Mm-hmm.
There was not a tremendous amount of creativity in shot variety.
Yeah.
Shot, reverse shot, maybe making some adjustment in that, which I thought may have also underplayed what the film was possible of doing.
Right.
I think there was a lot of camera movement without camera movement without
With
purpose.
purpose, yeah.
There was that moment early when Jean is at the school, and the school, the camera just drops down, and the school gets big, but really she gets big in the shot. And I'm not sure either of those thoughts were the thoughts that was going through the camera's mind. I think the camera was just
It was
creating
just-
a different dimension.
Yeah, the cinematography's nothing special, and it's not even nothing special to where it blends in with the film. It kind of is like, why is that shot there? Like, that doesn't need, like, there's just things that happen. Yeah, I just didn't like I really just I almost fell asleep at one point because it felt like I could see when we broke into, well, maybe I thought I could when we broke into Act 2. Obviously, you have the inciting incident of her taking on the storm or
Right.
whatever that thing is.
That material,
That
right.
material, right? And so you have an inciting incident that's probably about 20 minutes into the film. No, maybe a little bit earlier than that. Maybe
It
15.
could be earlier than that.
Maybe 15 minutes. And then breaking into 2. Oh, when was that? It was hey, spoilers, letting you know.
That's right.
Spoilers, because I'm about to spoil. Killing Mystique / Raven is that break into 2
Right.
of, and then it felt like we were in Act 2 for a very, 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 very long time. I think of when you get into 3 is when the main character decides they're going to make a change or go after the bad guy, or you know what I mean?
Right.
And that was the last like 7 minutes of the movie.
For sure. It feels to some extent like, and I think your point about this sort of being broken in these sort of fragmented parts, it does feel like there are 3 acts, and it feels like those 3 acts are doing different things.
Yeah.
And that last act feels like it's just the place where we're going to place the big action set piece.
Yeah, it was like all based around what she does at the end. There's also something I hate when movies rely on flashbacks to change their characters' minds. That bothered it bothered me so much because I knew we were going to rely on this flashback the second we were in the flashback. In the beginning, in the movie, in the beginning of the movie, when it said 1975, and Charles goes up to her in his wheelchair and is literally like, it's like 3 scenes in a row of, we're gonna hammer you over the head with this now, so that you don't forget about it when we bring it up again in about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 30 minutes.
It's like almost artificial plant and payoff, right? Like
yeah, 100%.
You're really completely planting these things only because you're going to revisit as opposed to pay them off, right?
Right.
Like that's definitely a choice. So I can buy that. I see where you're.
It drove me crazy. I didn't like the film at that moment. It was like 10 minutes into the movie,
right?
And I said, this movie's not going to do it for me. I made the decision in my head, which may have affected my overall enjoyment of the film, because I already said this is going to be poorly written. But I think I was right in my assumption, because there was, again, dialogue that was said, and just like, I don't know how to explain it. The dialogue was said multiple times from Jean. If I heard her say, "I can't control it," one more time,
right, you
don't need to. Yeah, I would have completely lost control in the theater. I just don't need to hear you say that. I think it was like 5 or 6 times to different people. I'm like, there could be so many other scenes happening that you could have written, because we already know as the audience that she can't control it. Stop going to new people and telling people that. Like, just show me things. Don't tell me things. So
the reorganization of players was also strange, right? So we don't have Quicksilver for the back half of the film,
right.
And I mean, I'm not sure why we don't have him there.
It looked like he got a bruise on his face or scraped his face, and that was
I guess. I don't know. I mean, I wanted to see him in that action.
Yeah.
He's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, visually, he's super interesting, and we just don't have that.
And
present.
he's the comedic relief,
Absolutely.
and he was missing this entire film.
Yeah.
There was nothing to break tension.
Yeah, and we see people who I don't know if they think they're fan favorites, because I think Quicksilver is a fan favorite.
Yeah.
But, Storm we see with all of this power, but that power is wildly limited in the offense in the last half of the film.
Yeah.
I just thought that the individual characters, there was a couple of big, like, I want to say Easter eggy style moments. So when they're in the woods having their dance, that sparkly singer is a character named Dazzler.
Yeah.
There was almost a moment that was the cover of a comic book where she's introduced, which is right around this period in the comics.
I thought she was so cool.
And just there and gone, right?
Yeah.
And there are, one of the things I like about this particular world of mutants is we keep getting to meet mutants in a minor way, and so we see like an interesting thing that works, like that idea of being able to communicate with everyone, right? So like, like that's an interesting thing. Like the power, you're able to cheat the whole movie by, you can make a person have a power that works perfectly in the film, and I love that. Like that's fun.
Yeah.
But then when you start pulling people off the board, like the chess match at the end, you don't play without placing all your pawns on the board. You don't play
Right.
without placing your knight and your queen on
Right.
the board. And I felt like those characters were constantly sidelined
Yeah.
in favor of. I don't even know in favor of what. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe straightforwardness, maybe simplicity. I don't know the answer. When you have so many attackers at the end,
Yeah.
you've really sidelined a lot of your characters.
Right.
It's really weird to me. It's just strange.
Another problem that I have is with the entire antagonists, and I say multiple because you're not sure who is the bad guy in this movie. Like the
Yeah.
worst, like you have Xavier, who's a bad guy to certain people. You have Magneto, who's a bad guy to certain people. And then you have Beast, who's a bad guy to certain people. And then obviously Jean as the overarching. Maybe she's a villain, but let's redeem her. Maybe not. And then you have Jessica Chastain's character, who I don't know what her name is, and that's probably an issue.
Well, I think she may be playing the White Queen, and that may be the Hellfire Club, but that's not really the comic.
Right.
It's just I mean,
Gotcha.
that's
Right.
the piece where that's fitting into.
Right.
Easter egg wise or whatever, resonance wise.
And so her entire species is obviously Earth's antagonist in a way, right? They just want to destroy it. So as the audience, you're supposed to say, hey, they're the actual bad guys that you should all be fighting against because it's we're resonating with our planet. And I can't resonate with the X-Men as much other than knowing them on a personal basis and hoping that Jean doesn't die for Scott's sake because you know what I mean? Like there's just like this empathy that you feel for other people. But I hate when plot armor protects every single good guy in the movie and then Jean goes and just obliterates the other species at the end. Like Jessica Chastain's walking by and like, we're just going to put you to sleep. Go to sleep. And then Jean's like dusting them like Thanos at the end. You know, I hate that stuff.
Well, it must have sucked when they were working on the special effects for this, and then they realized, oh crap, it's already been done.
It's already been done, yeah.
Or, maybe we'll just steal that model.
Hey man, can you send me over the project file for the Thanos snap? Like,
we're just gonna increase the size of the polygons.
Right.
And then that's
we're gonna make the dust a lot bigger.
Right, because it's big chunks.
It's gonna be blocks.
Chunky instead
it's chunky.
One thing I want to say from a story standpoint is this: I would never want to fly a helicopter in the X-Men universe.
I was just gonna say there was a moment where I was thinking, like the whole, if you see a gun in the first act, it's gonna be fired in the third act.
Yeah.
This is if you see a helicopter not get brought down in an X-Men movie in the second act, it's gonna be brought down in the third. Because I think there was only 2 helicopters that were brought down. Was there more than 2?
I think there's more than 2 helicopters that are brought down. I think there are 2 in that last sequence.
Oh,
there's
was there
definitely
2?
the one.
You're right.
There's the one that gets flipped, right?
Yep, you're right.
Because there's the one where the guy comes in through the front, and there's the one
That's right.
Gets destroyed.
There could be 4 or 5 different helicopters that go down.
And that tremendous moment of the helicopter that doesn't get destroyed, but is like, I'm not even sure, like, tossed.
I don't know. Yeah.
Released.
He tossed. Magneto tossed them, right,
boom.
to get them away.
But just not flying. I am not
flying
going
in
to
the
be in a helicopter.
Or trains. Don't go in trains either.
Yeah, trains don't work.
Trains are no good. Bridges. Stay off the bridges. Anything that is a metallic vehicle, which is every vehicle ever. So don't. Maybe a skateboard. No, it has metal tracks.
Yeah, it has metal tracks or whatever.
Yeah, you're really limited to your shoes.
There's nothing good, but you have to say that the worst was the helicopter.
Yeah, without doubt. Unless you all pile on the helicopter at the same time, and you can get pushed off.
Right, exactly.
I don't know why they all got on.
No, I would not.
I would have been like, no, get out, get out of the copter.
This is not. The guy says, I can't control this.
Yeah.
I'm not. Get in.
Get in. No.
Does not seem like a good idea. But I guess fear is a motivator.
Yeah.
The other thing I thought was the big fight in New York outside what I think is the Hellfire Club was difficult to follow. There was some pretty difficult moments to track there. What was going on with Nightcrawler was difficult to be clear.
Yes.
It was interesting.
Was she taking control of his mind? Is that what was happening?
That's what was happening, but why that meant... I mean, were they just ping-ponging him?
I think so. She kept holding her knife out.
Right.
So I was thinking she was trying to control his teleportation into the knife. And I'm only making this up right now because I couldn't comprehend it while watching the movie.
it was a complex thing, and I thought they did some cool stuff with Nightcrawler. I actually think one of the best uses of a mutant power was Nightcrawler. I think the opening sequence with the other spaceship with Nightcrawler was great.
Right.
And I do think they've captured his powers physicalization really well. Like it manifests in an interesting way. I struggle always with Scott Summers, with Cyclops. The comic wants to explain what's coming out of his eyes and how it functions.
Right.
But it has a lot of softness, vagary in the movies,
Right.
Which is easily remedied in a comic because of the clarity of line, and here everything's living and it poses some problems. But I thought they did a really nice job with Nightcrawler, and yet that moment was confusing to me. So from a comic book standpoint, there was a lot of things I sort of like from a comic book standpoint.
Yeah.
But it isn't because it was the comic. You follow me?
Right.
It's because I saw things that I recognized visually that were interesting to me, or interesting manifestations of what was there. I struggle with Professor X in the comics. I struggle with Professor X in the movie.
Yeah.
I struggle with this relationship with Magneto that is interesting, but simply repetition, right?
Yeah. Just they're friends. They're not friends. They're friends. They're not friends. They're friends. They're not. It just cyclical. They just have disagreements, but they both agree on they want to do what's best for mutants.
Right.
Right. They just believe what they're doing is wrong. With what the other person's doing. I don't know how to say that right, but they disagree with their methods. They just have the same heart for the species. But
nice scenes. Tell me about any nice scenes, any nice acting scenes you thought were there, any moments where you thought people were working together at least, even if the dialogue wasn't meeting the standard.
So,
and there's not a lot of them, right?
Gosh,
So
I just keep going to character issues.
Yeah.
Character issues upon character issues. Contradictions that keep coming up. So I loved the opening scene with the spaceship. You brought that up already. I loved the camaraderie. I loved the subtle hand on Jean's shoulder from Scott. Like there was a team function, happening. I loved how they worked together. You have these calls like Storm freeze close up those holes, and they all they had a plan. Like you can tell they've trained, that they've worked together, that this is something that they've been doing for a while. Which is why when they go off the rails and they kind of split a little bit, it just doesn't make sense, because they should be so close that any sort of betrayal, like Hank shouldn't be able to betray Jean the way he does.
Yeah.
After seeing her take on a freaking, whatever that material stuff is, right? Because he clearly knows, and he gave her the test, you're off the charts. There's something different about you. There's something wrong. But it was you that killed, right? There's just issues, and after issue, character-wise. Even with Magneto, who wasn't in the first half of the film, he straight up tells her, I was vengeful. It didn't fulfill me, so I stopped killing. Except now that you killed Raven, I'm going to become vengeful again. Yeah. Even though I know, and I've told you, and I've told the audience, that it doesn't fulfill me. So why is he doing it?
Yeah. And this island he has, which is interesting, actually an interesting
I would have loved
society,
right?
Yeah.
See more of that.
Is it made up of all angry, mean-spirited mutants who just have given up vengeance?
Right. Can we get Magneto's home for angry mutants?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I want to talk about music for a moment or two, because it's in my head.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so on 3, let's say what we thought about the music. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Ready?
I can't use that language. I use different language.
Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Is that more?
No, just say what you want to say.
I didn't like the music.
I thought it telegraphed everything throughout
really?
the film. I didn't like it. I just thought it was like a telegraph. I mean, it was all. So there was that moment where the family was there, the friends were having dinner before the aliens arrive and take over.
Right.
And we're having there's this light music with the dinner party, and she walks out the door, and the dog is barking at darkness, and the music like literally said, "Hey, listen, something's going to happen right now."
I think that's probably why I didn't like it.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just over and over again, the music was telling me what was going to happen next. Not what was happening while I was watching it, but what was going to happen next. It always was proceeding. And I don't necessarily think that's definitively a bad thing, but it might be a bad thing if it happens consistently.
Yeah.
And it might be a bad thing if I'm thinking about the fact that it's
What's
there.
this music telling me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
right.
no, this music's telling me. Like, not
Yeah.
what is it? There was no question.
Yeah,
I just
right.
kept feeling like, ooh, we've just gone into a minor key where this is the sinister sound. Like, and so that stuff starts flying at Jean, the solar flare, alien, Phoenix material, whatever.
Right.
Starts flying at her, and the music just goes, wonk, danger time. She's traumatized. She's obviously traumatized. When they were driving, the music switched in the car before the accident.
Yeah, no, the music, and that's why I hated it, because the music again added to the choppiness of the scenes. It didn't help you understand characters. It didn't help you understand anything that was happening other than, is this good, bad, suspenseful. It just told you how you should feel rather than how you do feel.
So if I asked you this, if this was a movie you'd seen as a television movie, like you saw it on TV first,
Like, as in it was like a Netflix,
Netflix is making work that's too good
I
for us
know.
to use it,
Okay.
like an ABC X-Men.
Okay.
Would that change your opinion? Does it being
Does
a
it
movie-
become better?
Does it become better, or at least does it become less?
It becomes
its
more
target.
tolerable.
That's what I want to say.
It doesn't become good. I don't think the location that you're broadcasting something makes something good or bad.
Great.
I think that the filmmaking and the pacing, I think if this was split into 2 1-hour pieces,
Right.
it would be much better.
Right, or 3 1-hour pieces,
Three-
like 43
three,
minutes,
45
right?
minutes, yeah.
Something like that.
It would be much better.
Yeah, agreed.
It comes down to pacing for me. I want to say one thing about this dog barking at the darkness.
Yeah, okay.
As a dog owner who has a wife who's paranoid about everything, there is no chance that she would, one, go to the dog barking out in the woods, and two, tell the dog it's okay, and then begin to walk towards whatever they're barking at. Never ever would that happen, ever. Doesn't matter who you are. It does not matter. So sorry, I have to get that off my chest.
No,
'Cause
it's
I thought
good.
about it. I think I took my glasses off and I did this sort of deal, and then I put my glasses back on, and then saw aliens coming out of the woods.
Yeah, there were plenty of people, not plenty because there weren't that many people in the end, but people were making decisions that I don't necessarily buy you'd make in the moment. And certainly the Charles Xavier, like I'm also not a big fan of this sort of retconning the goodwill of characters. I don't need to see Magneto and Xavier in this like constant battle for good and evil in
Right.
themselves. I'm much more interested in their charges and what happens to them and how they exist and deal with
Yeah.
it. And I'm gonna tell you where this goes. Like, it's about Deadpool.
Yeah.
So Deadpool is great, right?
Right.
And part of it is we have a character, and we have these characters who we're interested in
Yeah.
from Xavier's school. And it's
Right.
not about some great like teen angst drama, and it's not about false drama of the world of the mutants. It's like, here are some people who are going to do something, and they're interesting people.
Yeah.
And let's watch how they deal with a difficult
Right.
situation. And I think that's one of the reasons Deadpool functions, or at least those supplementary characters function in Deadpool, and why this struggles.
Well, yeah. So talking about that real quick, you have something in, I was listening to an interview with George R.R. Martin. I believe it was him, and he was talking about, or maybe somebody was talking about how George writes. Maybe that's what it was. And they were talking about, you have plotters and you have pantsers. And plotters are somebody who, they sit there and they write and they plan out all of the major points within this story, right? So you have these major aspects that you're going to hit, and now it's writing about how to bridge those segments.
Right.
And then you have pantsers, and they're called that because they write because they're flying by the seat of their pants. And they write as if they're the character discovering what's happening in that moment. And this film felt very, let's plot everything out and figure out how to get there. Because there was no self-discovery that I found for any of those characters. Everything felt pre-planned, and nobody's discovering how. It's just like, okay, this character needs to go from A to B. Where, okay, so this is going to happen, and this is what they're going to do, and the mindset of that character is affected because the writer's mindset is affected because they know what's going to happen in the future, rather than writing as if you're that character, figuring out the reaction and what is this person feeling in this moment. What would they do if a dog is barking into the woods and you can't see what's out there?
And then you decide not to use the dog barking.
Yes, right. The choices are then made, and you find out how to get them to be in a way that's realistic for the characters to get to that point. And there's no right or wrong way to write. You can do both, but I think you just have to be very conscious about if you are doing one or the other, there's negative aspects and positive aspects to both. This took it into the negative, I think.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, great. All right, so one more question for you, off the top of my head, because this is something as the movie was coming to a close that was stuck into my head. Is it possible for the X-Men to enter the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and not these X-Men, but the concept of X-Men as we've seen on film?
I think a limited number of X-Men can enter the Marvel, this gateway. And I think if they're gonna do it, it's gonna be through whatever multiverse is set up in Far From Home. That's just a prediction. I don't know. I struggle with the thought of even a multiverse within the real life, live action films. Because in Into the Spider-Verse, totally fine. Because in the freaking title, it's a multiverse movie, right? You get it, and it's closed at the end. So I think opening up a multiverse is hard. That wasn't your question, but I think maybe, and if they do, Deadpool has to be involved, I think, in some way, even if it's just like slightly small little cameos. I don't know. I don't know how they would do it, but
yeah, I don't know. It's certainly you can never have movies that are this much about upset people.
Yeah, everybody is too traumatized.
People are really living with a measure of, like, I can be a sad dude sometimes, and I can be frustrated, but that isn't the way the world is, right?
Yeah.
It's the way I am, and I need to change that when I'm like that to keep going. And I feel like sometimes we see here that these guys are all like struggling, and I'm full of angst and
I live in this huge house for free and get free education.
Yeah, with like all these cool people who love me, and
all these stupid powers.
Yeah, the Raven character's just so unbelievably disillusioned about everything, and things may not be great, but things you can be angry, but not like, oh, I'm so serious. And, it's really hard to breathe with these things because of my belly. Oh my God. And so like I struggle with that. I don't see how that sits next to Tony Stark and
Cap
Steve Rogers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it, in a way, this is in between what DC does, where DC has been doing. They're making some adjustments. And Marvel. This sits somewhere in between. But it still feels angsty to me.
I feel that 100%. Maybe the only way they are introduced is through you can't have two different teams like this coming together, unless it's Guardians integrating, right? But maybe it has to be a larger scale film, right? The X-Men take one area, the Avengers take another area. New York, DC, whatever. I don't know, something like that. I don't know how they do it, but they can't merge fully. I think they have to stay separate entities. So, last question: better than X3 or no?
Ugh, I knew you were going to ask that question. Yeah. But I would say better than X3 for two reasons. There's a thing that happens to Scott Summers in X3 that's stupid. It's stupid. And the last sequence with the reforming Wolverine is potentially one of the best ideas ever. So poorly executed. That last sequence in that movie was awful beyond awful beyond awful. Yeah. It just didn't make any sense.
Right.
And the comic goes cosmic to deal with this, right? So this storyline goes cosmic, and I like the cosmicness of this. But that X3 end of that movie, when they cross that bridge, from the moment they get on that bridge, you could really literally like Dada burn the back end of that film for me,
Yeah.
and I'd be happier.
You'd be fine,
It's
yeah.
the same as like of the greatest moment in Deadpool. It's when
Right.
Deadpool fixes the timeline of the previous appearance in
Right.
the Wolverine film. Like those movies, that period of X-Men making is so poor. And I'm not saying about the ones before that, but that one and,
That one in
and,
particular,
and
yeah.
Wolverine Origins and whatever, just
No,
horrible.
we don't talk about that.
So yeah, so just no. This is better.
It's better.
Yeah, absolutely better.
Yeah.
Go see this before you watch X3, or in fact, don't
watch
X3.
X3, yeah.
And go see this.
Cool. All right, well, let's take a break,
Let's do
and
that.
we'll meet up again in a couple days.
All right, why don't you try and start this car?
Where are my keys at?
I don't know. You gotta
I
lean
tossed
in.
them in the back.
Just lean in. You're gonna get yelled at by Sam if you do not put the keys in the car.
You're listening to the Racking Focus podcast.
And we're in the studio now having a conversation about Dark Phoenix just a couple days after we saw the film. And we're going to sort of see what we have discovered on the path between Friday and today. And we're also going to talk a little bit about changes in our thoughts. So, Josiah, where do you want to begin?
There's really no good place to begin because there's really almost nothing good about this movie. That's probably a little bit harsh, but
It's a little bit harsh.
okay. So I want to just start with something I found on Reddit, which pretty much sums up the movie for me. TV Junkie 93 said on June 6th at 8:28 p.m. I'm not saying it's a train wreck. I'm just saying there's 2 wrecked trains in it. Yeah, that's pretty much my feeling.
Well,
It's a train wreck. It's just a train wreck, and they put the second train wreck in because they didn't want to pretty much copy Captain Marvel. It feels like. I imagine it was going to be in space, and you mentioned that.
Definitively going to be in space.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the
There's a real good
aliens.
chance the aliens were going to be the Skrulls instead,
Yeah.
and it would have been the Queen Skrull in charge.
Right.
And then, of course, the twist of Captain Marvel, spoilers for Captain Marvel, is about a positivity there, and that
Right.
would have not functioned in this storyline, and you would have had 2 competing sort of Skrull
Right.
concepts.
Yeah.
And with this being the last X-Men movie, then that would have bled into the MCU, and there's no way they could do it. So we end up with this alien race that does exist in the comics and is destroyed by the Phoenix Force.
Okay.
So like that
Yeah.
stuff is present, although it's not significant to some of the early comics, and I'm
Uh-huh.
going to actually end up talking about a little bit.
I didn't realize what the Jessica Chastain's character's name was throughout the film because I didn't ever hear them really say
I
it.
don't believe they said it.
What was it?
It's Vuk.
What an awful
It's
name.
VUK. It's a comic book name.
Is it?
But
Yeah.
so it's an Easter egg, but
Right.
one perhaps best left unhatched.
Yeah, they
Like
just
we
never
could've-
said it on camera.
Not,
I don't see
really.
it in the
Maybe
movie.
that's what they did. Maybe someone said it,
Yeah, and I thought they were cursing. Maybe I don't know.
or they said it
Yeah.
and they laughed and they were like, "Oh, we
Right,
can't,
right.
we can't,
Can't
say
say
our
it.
name.
Yeah, can't say
we'll
your
just
name."
keep it because it's an Easter egg. Someone will know. Like some internet YouTube guy will be able
Right.
to talk about it.
Yeah, us essentially.
Us. There you go.
Yeah, I still don't like the movie. It has a wonderful 22% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Pretty much everybody that I've seen online talk about it has just said they've really not liked the movie. I think there's some critics that actually are only trying to talk about the good parts of the film, and so they rate it a little bit higher, trying to avoid the. And that might just be because they're trying to stand out in the review
Right.
lineup.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think this film is any good. And it what hurts is that we've seen the superhero film franchise done right, almost perfectly with the Avengers from Iron Man all the way to Endgame. We know how it should work. We know it can work. It's just when they introduce Jean in one movie prior to the one that we're supposed to be focused on in Dark Phoenix. We don't know her. I don't feel anything for her because I haven't gotten to see her evolve over more than one movie.
Well, and
or
a
less.
horrible
And a
movie.
horrible movie, yeah.
To be clear, the movie we meet her in is the worst of, definitively, potentially the worst comic book movie, but
Right.
definitely the worst movie in the X-Men series.
Yeah.
And that means that we are not connected. We also haven't rewatched that film.
Right.
So I rewatched Logan because it's fantastic.
Right.
And any character in Logan who reappears, I have a connection to because I've committed to that film. But I
Yeah, I don't want to watch Apocalypse again.
I don't think I could watch the last 20 minutes of Apocalypse without
No.
like losing my mind.
And so the question then that I started thinking about was, is Dark Phoenix better or worse than The Last Stand, X3? Because I felt emotionally more connected to the previous Jean Grey in X3, even though that's an awful movie.
Right.
But it's not even strictly about Jean in that film. It's about Logan and his struggles surrounding this love triangle with her and Scott, and him having to pretty much kill her at the end, right? And there's this empathy that you feel towards him. You feel bad for her, and like we've gotten to see her in X1 and X2. So you get to know the dynamics and the relationships between everybody and with Jean in that previous trilogy. So
Yeah.
in here, it's just like, oh, here's Jean. She got these powers, and she can't control them, and I don't feel anything for you, feel bad at all for you, because we just got to know you. So that's just maybe it's better or worse. I don't really know.
So I think as a film, it's better. I think as the story of Jean Grey, of the writing, of the acting, it's worse.
Yeah.
The last sequence in Last Stand is so horrible, and it's, for me, part of the problem is it betrays what emotionally is happening with Jean and Logan.
Right.
Because you get that, but you get it in so deep in the crap that it's hard for me. Like, I remember that moment, but
Right.
I care about it because I read comics where
Right,
I
right.
understand that emotional relationship, that hard choice.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I saw that on the screen. Here, here she makes the choice. So
Right.
that sense of sacrifice is missing,
Right.
which is significant, I think. One of the things I wanted to talk about was about the comic books, and so I'm just going to do that. So these are the old stories of Phoenix in their sort of original form. And what you need to know is that in the original comic, so this comic, which is 137 of the original X-Men run, cheap, 75 cents to buy it, is the moment where Phoenix goes. Like, it's the Phoenix goes away story where
Phoenix
she's
must
destroyed,
die.
right?
Yeah.
Phoenix must die. But notice it's not Dark Phoenix must die.
Right.
You get me?
Right.
And this thing happens in the comic where Jean's power exudes out. She becomes this dangerous thing, and Scott makes sure she dies by a blast of a weapon. And so he's made that sacrifice.
Right.
And so, but the key to this is issue 137. Jean Grey's been in the comic for quite a while. The
Yeah.
Phoenix Force has been growing. There's
Right.
a giant, if you start in like issue 108 through here, there's a build. So that means something like 30 comics to get to the point where we kill her.
Yeah.
And then, when we're looking, I'm talking about
No,
the other
talk
ones,
about
the
it.
earlier
Good.
ones, we have like where Phoenix comes, and like this kind of imagery is what we see in the movie, And then, of course, the horrible cover of Dark Phoenix, which may mean Dark Phoenix has problems anyway. It's a pretty horrible cover and works. But we see a group of X-Men who, in these stories, know this person.
Right.
And this force that's growing in her is very much from her.
Right.
And so we can't blame it on someone else. She's trying to control her own identity. She knows it's bad, sure, but the real kicker of it is it becomes a story about self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
And Scott doesn't want these aliens who are really like the Justice League of America, or not the Justice League, the one that Superboy is in. I don't like DC Comics. Sorry, I know I just made bad friends. Are good enemies, but those characters appear redone so that we can. Marvel is making fun of the DC universe
Right,
there,
right.
and we see this thing end. But the key for me is it's issues and issues, right? Dark Phoenix appears in 135. We see Dark Phoenix die in 137, but we see the Phoenix appear in 120. Like, so many books,
Yeah.
and we had no time here.
Yeah, it's just rushed. It's completely rushed.
Yeah,
I just want more time with the. I mean, we've seen it play out like with Avengers. We know that it works. So just instead of investing in the entire story to take place in an hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours, let's take some time. And like we mentioned, like I'd like to see more of what dorm life is like at Xavier's school. I loved the first, I think, 30 minutes of the movie up until Jean starts to really feel the effects of like I loved the party at the school.
Yeah.
Never thought about that being a thing they did, but yeah, they absolutely would have. And I loved them working as a team in the beginning. It was pretty much after she blasted her way and
like blew everybody
blew
down
everybody
in that
up.
moment.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then we start
started to
hearing
go
about, she's out of control, and
There's just really quick. People just start to think differently once that happens. Not thinking of her as almost like a friend. It's just like she becomes this out of control thing.
The other thing too is that opening sequences has such promise,
Yeah.
both directorially
Oh,
and
yeah.
idea-wise.
Yeah.
And so as you watch the movie and it really
You
collapses,
almost feel betrayed a little bit.
yeah, you
Yeah.
talked a lot about it feeling like a lot of little parts last time, and I've thought about that.
Yeah.
And it is, in fact, a movie that doesn't have a cohesive center,
Right.
because they don't know what story they want to tell. So they really want to tell a story about Xavier finding out that he's not the guy he thought he was.
Right.
They really want to tell the story about this interesting commune that Magneto
Yeah.
has created. They really want to tell the story of what happens to Mystique and her nobility in conflict with Xavier
Right.
in this new timeline. They really want to tell the story of a new timeline.
Yeah.
They really want to tell the story of Dark Phoenix, and it and
Again, that's like 4 or 5 movies that they just crammed into one movie.
and that's a significant failure,
Yeah.
and it may be what you're talking about in that fragmentary nature.
Yeah,
of the
it
film.
felt so fragmented, so not cohesive to me.
So, like we talked about the fact that Vuk is this. I want to use that. I want to use
Yeah,
that name
please
as
use it
often
as
as
much as
possible.
possible, yeah.
It's not. I mean, Chastain must have been devastated when she realized the name that she was going to have. So Vuk, and maybe the censors pulled it out. Maybe that's it. Maybe what happened was
that could be
like
true,
they
yeah.
said Vuk, and some
Yeah.
censor said, "Oh, we got to give this an
Yeah,
R." So go ups. No, this
Yeah,
isn't
we only
Logan.
allow one F word in
Right.
a PG-13 film, and
So-
even then, it was still kind of shocking to. It felt out of place. It did. It really did. So
And that's something else we can talk about. But the Vuk character should have probably been a Skrull, right? That would have been a really different movie.
Right.
The ending being in space and not on that train would have been a really different experience. We talked about that train.
if it was in space, it would have come full circle. 2, would everybody else be able to fight up there with her,
But
or would it
that's
have
what-
just been Jean?
But
up
then
there?
people are at risk.
Right.
So your plot armor starts to collapse because small fragmentation of whatever breathing suit you have would do you in. Where here, that's not the risk. And so we see that plot armor, which was so bothersome to us. But out there, you're always that chance that someone at the last minute goes, and it's what Guardians does so well, right? Space
Right.
is a deadly place in Guardians.
Yeah.
And so we're always in a position where we believe someone could freeze and stop breathing.
Right.
Here, in that train, no one was at risk.
No.
At all. I want to talk about tone a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Go for it.
So I heard a really interesting interview today. I was listening to the spoiler special on Empire podcast about Endgame.
Right.
It's fantastic. If you haven't listened to it, you listen to it. It's fantastic, hilarious, and thoughtful. But they talked about how they handled Fantastic Four
Right.
in the Marvel universe, and I think the Fantastic Four, people are like, get them in there. I'm like, they're the most dangerous group we can bring. They failed every single time.
Yeah.
No one knows how to manage them. Do we want to do that? And teams aren't the way to go. It's individual character stories.
Yeah.
But what they talked about was tone, and they said maybe the way to do it is to make the Fantastic Four the Shazam of the Marvel universe, to make it the film youth, like kids centered, so that kids
Right.
can enjoy it. And what I wanted to say about this is this movie doesn't know what it wants to be. It doesn't know its tone. When you go to see Logan, you know what this film is. It is not
Yeah.
a film for kids.
No, it has an R rating.
And
First scene, you know right off the bat what this is going to be.
And this movie, I don't think, ever understood
No.
completely what the
Right.
tone needed to be. Not that it was humorous or not, and it's what I was saying about the TV movie thing.
Mm.
It's that safety and sterility of a TV movie, a traditional TV
Yeah,
movie,
right.
that doesn't have a tone because it's simply telling a story.
Yeah.
And that's where I felt like we were with this.
Yeah. What's a shame is like I wonder if how much Kinberg was affected by the studio. Like if the studio really just crapped on his work, on his movie, on his writing, on his directing, and just really limited him. Because he did write Days of Future Past. He has a lot of credits.
He does. He did write Last Stand too, which is interesting
Yeah.
because he's already done this story.
Yeah, well, and that's the other question is why would you give the same guy who wrote the last Jean Grey Dark Phoenix movie and it was a failure? Why would you give him another one as his like directorial debut?
Yeah.
Essentially, the only other thing I think that's on his list of directing is the new Twilight Zone series,
Right.
which now I'm really concerned about. So I
Yeah, well,
just don't know what the choice is there. But he can be a good writer. He did write Days of Future Past, which is arguably the best X-Men movie.
Right.
Not for me, even not just in this new franchise, but overall the last. Other than Logan, I think Logan's probably
Well,
the
Logan,
best one. Logan's like on a
almost
whole
like
other
not
level.
even right.
Yeah.
But it does the thing that that's magic with these superhero movies. It's a single hero
Yeah.
with people around them.
Yeah.
We're telling a single hero story. So even in the madness of Civil War, it's a story about Cap. It's a
Right.
story about Stark. It's
Yeah.
everyone else is fitting into that. Black Panther has a lot of characters in it.
Yeah.
But it's a story of
about
one
Black
guy.
Panther, yeah.
And this movie doesn't know who it's about. It
Yeah.
can't be about Xavier and Jean Grey. It can't
Right.
be. It's too much. And when you look at his credits, but certainly Apocalypse suffers from the same thing.
Yeah.
The Fantastic Four from 2015 suffers from the same thing. But he found a way to make it work with Days of Future Past.
It was
You know-
was it a longer movie? Was that movie longer?
It was longer than this.
Yeah.
But not by a lot. And
Okay.
it had so many more characters.
Yeah.
Right?
I wonder.
but
I wonder
it
if the
told Logan's
complexity.
story.
I wonder if the. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we just need to stop making movies without Wolverine in it.
Right.
Yeah, because it's him going back. You're just following him
Mm-hmm.
around for 2 hours.
And the rest of the characters are in jeopardy, and we see them in jeopardy, and then we move back to
You're right.
this
It is.
Logan
It's
story.
focused on one person, whereas this is. There's so many different conflicts happening. I liked Xavier's character arc. I liked it. I really did. That might be the one thing I liked from the movie. I just don't like how it felt forced. Like I would have liked him to get there in a different way. Like it felt like on the train when he's saying like I'm sorry, I was wrong. Was like we should probably all work together. I'm just gonna say this so that you guys don't hate me anymore. Didn't feel sincere to me, and that's not. I don't think McAvoy's acting like being bad. This is, I think, just a weird time and place for this to happen. Yeah, of course I'm gonna say sorry once I'm chained up and I can't use my powers or anything like that, right? Like, I don't know, it just bothered me. There's so many things that bothered me.
Yeah, so I'm gonna a thing that bothered me that's minor, but I just want to say it
Yeah,
was
say
the
it.
helmet moment where they were both taking off their helmets at the same time.
Uh-huh.
That when you do that sort of literal parallel. When you haven't done anything like aesthetically interesting before that,
Yeah.
that makes me crazy. That was a moment where I was like, oh goodness gracious, he has to take his helmet off. Ugh. Right, so the
Yeah.
crushed helmet, it was just
It's stupid. There were times when there was just moments that I was like, you don't need to show this. You don't need to show this moment. We know that Magneto has a helmet, and we know he's not wearing it right now, which means it's hidden away somewhere. Like they did not need to go and show him pulling out this box from under his bed and lifting the cloth in this dramatic fashion, looking at it and then picking it up and putting it on.
because it's not an Easter
I'm
egg
like, this
anymore.
is not like no one cares about this, and everything within me wanted to say, "What's in the box? What's in the box?" It has to be your helmet. This is stupid. Can we just cut out this
And could we not,
yeah.
instead of that, have spent time with him talking with the guys who he
Yes.
lives with about who's willing to go do this
Yes,
thing?
exactly.
Like, that team is another team of people we
Yeah.
might be interested in.
It was just time on screen wasted on stupid things when they could have spent time building character, building
Yep.
story, giving you greater insight to what Magneto's thinking or what the other people around him. I didn't realize that the dude had some crazy hair mutant powers until he started using it later
I
on.
love the crazy hair mutant.
Yeah, it would have been
powers,
fun
too.
to see more of him.
I'm looking for who he was.
Yeah, there's just
real
so many
quickly.
issues. Let's see if we can find a positive here. Or maybe we just talk about.
Well, I had a couple positives, so I'll say
Go
that.
ahead.
And there's something else that has left my head now because I'm trying to find a guy's name. So, like I say, you can ride the ride.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad film. It's not a film that turns me away.
Right.
It's just a film that isn't good.
it's just disappointing.
And it's flat.
Yeah.
It's not. There's nothing there for me to go. So, like, I'm not going to rewatch this. But if it comes on HBO,
Yeah,
I'll probably watch it this
Yeah.
Saturday night if it's on AMC or whatever, wherever
Right.
Disney's going to vomit this or Fox is going to vomit
Right,
this
right.
stuff out now. I'll watch it, right?
Yeah.
On FX. I guess it'll be on FX. And
Yeah.
I would certainly watch it on FX. But I wouldn't watch it from start to finish.
No.
But I might
You'll
watch
catch
it.
a segment of it or something.
Yeah, there's not enough pretty pictures. There's not enough panels, but it's still viewable. Like it's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
a story I can watch.
Right.
I appreciate the actors. I appreciate the characters. So there's a positive I can get.
The actors are too good for this movie.
Without question.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've come down to. Man, it's just so disappointing to talk to.
Let me say something. Let me ask you this question, right? So we saw Godzilla. We saw this.
Yeah.
you didn't like either. I
Yeah.
didn't really like either, although I like this more than Godzilla. I'm going to tell you why after you tell me the
What
difference
I
in the
think?
two. Yeah, talk about the two of them together for a second. This is it. So Godzilla spoilers now.
shoot.
Go watch our episode.
I think they suffer from a similar issue of
Why?
the characters. It's the characters suffering for the sake of spectacle again. We've just seen that for the last. We saw it in Game of Thrones. We see it in Godzilla. We see it in this. They want to do cool things and cool effects, and like the characters suffer. The writing suffers. The dialogue is bad. Like there's just things that are happening that shouldn't be happening. I don't know which movie I liked worse, or hated more, I guess is the right phrasing. Probably. I think I might have hated Godzilla more, only because I found myself rolling my eyes much more in the film than I did at this guy. And that's without audience affecting my mood, because I think I really hated the movie if I consider the audience that we were with. But yeah, I would put Godzilla lower than this, even though it has a higher Rotten Tomatoes score, and the critics would probably disagree with me on that. But yeah, why did you like Godzilla more than this? Is that what you were saying?
No, I want to say in a lot of ways I like Godzilla less than this. And
Gotcha.
that's the controversy that I know we both are sort of sharing. And I think for me the difference is this: this movie just doesn't do anything with what it's doing.
Yeah.
And the story isn't as precious to me. And like these comics mattered. I read these as a kid.
Yeah.
I own a bucket load of these. They told the story.
Yeah.
The characters are weak, they're underplayed, but the story just rides through. There's no risk of this disappearing.
Right.
X-Men aren't at risk. People know their value. We know what happens with Logan. We know what happens with Days of Future Past. We know it can work. And on that note, when it moves to the MCU, it can only get better.
Right.
I mean, it could destroy the MCU, I guess, but it really could only get better. And so this movie had no stakes for that for me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let it go more.
You're concerned more about Godzilla not coming back to
The
the
stakes
screen.
are higher with Godzilla. First of all, because the character has a much longer cinematic life
Right.
that needs a level of honoring. I felt like this movie honored these stories more than Godzilla honored Godzilla's legacy.
Right.
And especially in relationship to the fact they dumped Easter eggs over top of the film instead of character content. And again, we can't deny that movie, the moment with Godzilla, underground explosion moment.
Yeah. There's moments.
the
I
scientist
think there's
touches his
moments
flesh.
in Godzilla that's amazing. I think there's probably a few moments in Dark Phoenix that are great, even though none come to mind at the moment.
Godzilla's a prettier film, right?
Oh, absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I
Absolutely.
can understand that distinction.
Yeah.
This has that first experience right through to the argument in the office between Mystique and Xavier is really rock solid.
Yeah. It's from there it goes downhill. I would have liked to see more panels. I would have liked to see the imagery should have been better, especially since you have source material to base shots off. Like I'm sure if we opened these comics up, showed it to the camera, that we would find some really incredible. Like, what is this? Like, this is insane.
Right. The
Like-
cover right there, there's emotion on that cover.
Yeah.
Right? It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have to put her in the Jean Grey
please don't.
costume,
Yeah,
right?
don't do that.
Although one of the things I also heard was a conversation about the fact that Marvel's good at putting people in masks and that the Fox folks aren't. And I think that that's an issue, too, for the film. Having
makes
these
sense,
kids
yeah.
remain young, these characters remain young and youthful, also is disruptive to the storyline, right?
Right.
We need them to have some maturity so that their relationships are more than some teen comedy on television, teen drama show, right?
Right.
And-
Feels
and
too
I think
juvenile in a way. Yeah. And like the characters feel young, and the filmmaking feels like they're amateurish in a way. You know, like it just kind of goes together for some reason.
And this guy, he's worked on things that are beautiful. Like if he just watched the work of the films he produced, we should see a better movie. And there was money for him to use.
It's just the creative direction, and that's what it comes down to. And unfortunately, he's to blame. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that what we want to think about is this, right? As we sort of bring ourselves out. Right, timer is up. Is this when we put this next to Endgame? Should the Marvel Universe be afraid of taking on X-Men, Fantastic? Right. Should they be afraid of the Fox properties, all of which have failed in some significant way?
I think they're going to give it one major shot, and if it doesn't work, then we're going to see them bury it for a little bit. Even though I don't think people want X-Men to go away, I think X-Men's a major part of the comics, right?
Mm-hmm. They're more.
They are more prominent than a lot of the Avengers characters.
Certainly. Well, that's why the Avengers were available, because they didn't market them off as quickly as the X-Men. Right. And for an Avengers fan, like I was an Avengers fan, that always pissed me off. Like I was like, man, why won't they make the movie of the good characters instead of the X-Men? Who I was like,
we waited, and then you got what you wanted.
I got what I wanted, and then all my friends who were X-Men fans.
Hopefully they'll do something good with this. And if they do, they're going to make it more character based. There's people studying what is wrong with the X-Men right now, and I'm sure there's a screenplay somewhere that some fan has written, some random person has written, that is incredible.
Well, one of the great Godzilla stories is one of the best Godzilla films was a contest from fans. They said, fans, write a movie, and this guy wrote the movie, and it's almost exactly what we see on the screen. It's the one called Destroya, Godzilla versus Destroya. So we know fans can do it if they love the franchise and then are put in the hands of a good director.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes I think, man, business is business, and
it comes down to money. And they're gonna make
management.
How much money are they in debt for this movie?
I don't know what numbers. They're gonna get killed.
I thought I read like $100 million or something like that this morning, but I don't know if that's actually
it made the least money
of any X-Men film.
Any X-Men.
Yeah.
33. It says 33 million domestic. That's what. The franchise, franchise low of 33. That seems lower than I even thought it was. That's
it's not going
horrible.
It's not going to do
That's
well.
15 hours old too. So that's what? No, that's
and
no good.
What stinks. It's
time for us to go.
to do something different. Yes.
All right. So why don't we say goodbye? We're gonna break and we'll close out with reminders about social media. Well, that'll wrap it up for this week's Racking Focus podcast. We're so glad that you joined us and spent some time. We want to take a moment and introduce you, the newest member of the team. She's unhappy to be on camera, but we're making her sit here for a moment. Sam Detweiler, our editor and all-around person who tells us when we suck and we should be more professional. So, Sam, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
Okay, good. That's great.
That's all that was needed.
That's all we're going to get. So when you watch the video versions of this, you're seeing Sam's fine editing work. If you don't hear us say as often as we had in the past, or you notice we didn't say something as stupid as in the past, she probably prevented that. She's also forcing us to count down, which you'll probably see in the outtakes. So, Sam, thanks for being here. Josiah, what's up next for us?
We are going to give you guys the option. This weekend, we had 2 movies on our list. We don't really want to see both of them. We're going to choose one or the other. It's either Shaft or Men in Black 4. We're going to do a poll on, I think you can poll
Twitter.
on Twitter.
I'm gonna do Twitter.
With
I'll do
Twitter.
A Twitter poll.
We can also do Instagram and just combine all of them together if you want to.
We'll do Instagram poll, Twitter poll, and we'll do a Facebook poll.
How about that?
Any way you might be contacting us.
Yeah.
And that means you can vote 3 times.
Yeah. You can also tweet at us or DM us at PodFocus on Twitter.
It's PodFocus on Twitter.
PodFocus on Twitter. Racking Focus Podcast on Instagram. And you can always email us at rackingfocuspod@gmail.com.
So remember, that one of the most important things you can do at this point is review us. And now that we've reviewed 2 films badly, I live in fear of the evil reactions of people who've watched or listened to our podcast. So what we'd love you to do is give us a review, 5 stars, tell people about us, share this on whatever social media you use. Let people get the word out so people can see Sam's fine work. You don't have to love us. You can disagree with everything we say. But Sam's future may depend on this as an editor. We want people to see her work, to hear that. And so, for goodness sake, if you can just treat this little trio of people trying to make a podcast with a 5-star text-heavy review, positive, of course, especially about Sam's work, we would love it, and it would help us get more folks watching, and as a result, more folks going to see movies and talking about film. I guess that's it.
I think that's it. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Racking Focus podcast.